Welcome to today's video. In today's video, we are taking the 24-70 f2.8 lens from Sony and comparing it to the 16-35mm f2.8 to figure out what the best lens is for you to take on the next time you travel. So with that, let's jump on into it. So welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Brock Wonder. I am a street and travel photographer based in Toronto, and on this channel we talk about how to live a more creative and impactful life. Now, one of the big things that we do on this channel is obviously travel. We have a few videos up right now in Ottawa and Montreal, and throughout the month of October we're actually going back to Ottawa, we're going to Calgary, going on a trip to Vancouver in November, and ultimately something that's really on my mind is how much gear I actually want to take with me. And if I had one lens recommendation, what is the one lens that I'd actually take in order to keep my carry-on light and really get the most out of what it is I'm trying to create with? And in order to test that, I figured what better way than to take both of these lenses on a weekend where we're just in Toronto anyway, give you a walkthrough through the city and bring you to some of my favorite street photography locations. Number one being the St. Lawrence market behind me, and really just testing out what these lenses can do. If you're a photographer or you're somebody else that's just trying to make the most of the season before the snow comes down, you're also probably wondering what lens you want to take to be able to keep your carry-on light, or if you're looking to invest in some new glass and are wondering if there is one lens that can really do it all. And I want to show you what that can be in today's video. Now, the first location we're actually going to be shooting at is the St. Lawrence market behind me, and we'll be using the 24-70 to be able to do that because a lot of what I want to capture here is people and culture. And there are three reasons why I think a 24-70 actually excels over a 16-35 in these situations. First one being restrictions with focal length. With a 16-35, you're obviously restricted up to 35mm. While a street photographer will probably tell you that 35mm is not only the best focal length to shoot candid portrait photography in, but is probably also the only focal length you actually need when you're doing street photography. In my experience, it's always a little bit nicer to have that extra reach when you're out on the streets, especially when you're in a travel situation and you don't really want to run up close to your subjects, especially if this is something that you're uncomfortable with. If you're new to travel photography or you're just trying street photography for the first time on your travels, it's probably pretty daunting to get up close to your subjects, and having 50 and 70mm focal length to be able to play with is going to save you a lot of the trouble of finding yourselves in uncomfortable situations of capturing those moments of people. And so because of that, the 24-70 is a lens that actually does a lot more than a 16-35 actually can, and it'll save you the hassle of wishing you had longer focal lengths when you find yourselves in situations that are probably better suited to actually using it. In my opinion, I'd rather have a higher probability of getting a photo at a longer focal length, even if it's not really the way a purist might take the shot, than not being able to get the shot at all. The second thing that comes along with a longer focal length, especially when you're capturing people, is being able to take advantage of compression with a lens. The 24-70, when at 50 and 70mm, has amazing compression and separation with your depth of field, and really creates a really unique look when you're finding people in large crowds, or maybe you're just trying to isolate your subject a bit more and take advantage of that compression for something far away. And then the final thing is, with that depth and a higher aperture, you're able to really capture moments in a way that's extremely unique versus shooting with a 16-35. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're looking to take food photos and you're also trying to capture people, you now have a focal length that can do it all. And so with that, let's go on to location number 2 and talk about some of the considerations on why you might want a 16-35. Okay, we are now at location number 2. Now, when we're capturing architecture, we want to make sure that we use focal lengths that cause the least amount of distortion possible. And these would be the focal lengths of 35, 50, and 85. And this is because buildings themselves are very accurate in how they look. They have a lot of straight lines, they have a lot of pristine edges, and when we use a lens that causes distortion, generally focal lengths that are really wide, like 16mm, you end up getting bowing in your photography and just a weird overall look in how a structure actually comes across. 24-70 would actually provide you with more accurate results with getting photos that are the most technically correct. But that said, when you're traveling, a lot of the times we don't either have enough time to get photos that are technically correct, or we're just trying to take photos that are really just the most creative possible. And most of the time, there's not really enough room in our surroundings to be able to take advantage of focal lengths that are tighter up. So for instance, if you're in a crammed alleyway or you're across the road, you're going to end up using a 35 or a 50 millimeter and not get enough of your structure in frame. And a perfect example of this is at the front of the Scotiabank building. There is a massive archway, which is one of Toronto's most iconic pieces of architecture, and it is a lot of fun to capture with a wide lens, even if it doesn't provide for a technically correct photo. And that's because it provides you with that extra wider focal length to be able to fit more into your photography when you're in those tighter city streets and can't really fit a lot of what you want at those longer focal lengths, given that you're just restricted by how much distance there is between you and your subject. So with that, let's hop on down to the next photo location and talk about lookup and landscape photos when it comes to capturing a city on your travels. As our last location, we are at TD Towers, and why we're here is because it's probably one of Toronto's best landscape and lookup photos. And what I really want to highlight is the difference between a 16 millimeter photo versus a 24 millimeter photo, because this is honestly the eternal debate about what lens to get and what lens actually gets you the most in your focal length. And do you really need a 16 millimeter focal length, or is 24 millimeters good enough? And in my opinion, a lot of the times you're actually going to want that 16 millimeters to get more in frame. And this photo at TD Towers is a perfect example of that. As you can see, there is a lot more in frame at 16 millimeters as far as depth around the building goes, and just overall what leads to a more interesting composition and makes you really feel like you're enveloped in your location. So overall, if you're debating between these two lenses for travel photography and overall what you're going to be capturing, even though the 16 to 35 is probably better for capturing casual city architecture and is definitely a better lens for landscape photography, I think a lot of the photos that you'll actually capture when you're out abroad is going to be people and culture related. Whether you're in a restaurant wanting to take food photos or just capturing people in candid moments while you're out exploring, most of the photos you're going to get are going to be in those settings. And the 24 to 70, being that it is a lens that can do so many different things with the availability of its focal length choices, is probably going to be the go-to lens that you're going to want to end up buying. But inevitably, it's going to be up to you and really what you think you're going to be shooting more of when you're on your next trip. And so with that, if you have any more questions relating to these two lenses or want to see some future lens tests in the future, feel free to comment down below and I'll be sure to make a video about that. If you did find this video useful to you, also let me know, or feel free to send me a DM on Instagram and let me know what you think. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.